Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel. We have a new Milestone video, although I must admit this was supposed to come out for 15,000 subscribers, but I had to delay it unfortunately. So here we are, 16,000 subscribers. Thank you everyone for the support and love. I appreciate you guys and gals being here so much. So let's have some fun with this. I'm going to be talking about a few MMORPG things I wish I knew when I first started, and I want this to be interactive. So think of some yourselves, stuff that you wish you knew when you first started playing MMOs, and post them in the comments section below so we can compare notes and experiences at the end. So let's begin. The first thing that comes to mind is probably the MMORPG lingo, abbreviations, and terminology as a whole, plus specifically for the game I was playing at the time. As a fresh newbie coming into the game, wanting to try and experience all forms of content, I interacted a lot in chat and in my first guilds and found myself scratching my head a lot at the terms that we as experienced players now today know about, of course. Things like, make sure you LOS the boss, which of course stands for line of sight. Or, hey, can you throw me a hot, which is healed over time. Or in Guild Wars 2, that's the short form for the expansion Heart of Thorns. So you see where I'm getting at here. As a new player, it's easy to get bombarded with these things and you'll get curious like I did. And it did take a while before I started remembering and using these terms myself, both genre-specific and game-specific ones. Most MMO players will use short forms for everything, even names of dungeons or regions, because that's just how it is. So this is one of those things I wish I had known before jumping into my first MMO a decade ago. But that's not really realistic in a way, because sometimes it's hard to prepare for it without experiencing it firsthand. It's not something you can study hard for before playing a game, because sometimes you just can't beat experiencing it first. So if there's any newcomers out there to MMOs, don't worry, just play the game. The more you experience it, the more exposure you'll get, and nothing beats gaining knowledge of a game and of MMOs organically, and that can only come with time. Okay, for number 2, mine would be I wished I knew that wider MMORPG communities exist. What do I mean by this? I mean communities, fan hubs, and user content that extended externally outside the game I was playing. For context, my first 2 years in my first MMORPG was pretty much hardcore gaming, 6 hours a day after college, and when I was done for the day, I'd head to bed and do it all over again the next. Most of the fun was had in-game with friends and guildmates. When I started going to university and got an internship, my playing time was reduced of course, and I found myself having to fill that void of getting my MMO fix away from the computer. And that's when I discovered the awesome world of fan sites and player blogs and podcasts about the game. And I fell in love with all that stuff immediately because it did feel like an extension of my own game time. I could listen to or read about what prominent members of the community thought about certain topics in game. I got news and I got discussions, and it was all eye-opening really, and in some ways did inspire me to start my own blog, which I guess carved a path of me eventually becoming an MMO creator thanks to that exposure. I just wished I had discovered all that stuff sooner because it was very helpful and it enriched the experience of playing a certain MMO for sure. This was also a time before YouTube really blew up to what it is today, so for new players coming into MMOs, all this stuff is so readily available for you today in multiple content formats to digest, and I hope you guys find us, the creator community, as something that enriches your own experiences of the genre outside the games you play, just like it did for me. This one's good. When I first started, I was a clicker. I used a crappy $5 mouse to click skills on my hotbar. The game was playable. Sometime later, I became a tapper. I would tap keyboard keys to execute skills. A little harder than mouse clicks, but it worked. The game was playable. And then I discovered the 12-button thumb grid mouse, and my MMO life was forever changed, and suddenly, the game was not playable anymore if I wasn't using this mouse. If there's anyone out there who has not seen or heard of this type of mouse before, do yourselves a favor and go get one. I promise it will in some way make your MMO gaming so much better. I personally became more effective as a player in both PvE and PvP because having access to 12 buttons on my mouse to fire off skills while moving or turning with that very same mouse is a pretty huge deal. I've gone through about 8 of these in the last 9 years and I can't play without it, so I always have extra laying around in close proximity. If you're looking for some, I'm not sponsored by these brands in any way, but 3 in particular make pretty good ones, at least in my region, like the Razer Naga, which is light but breaks easily and suits smaller hands. Logitech has one that suits larger hands but it's heavier, and I believe Corsair has one too, but that's pretty expensive in my part of the world, so I've never bought one. Bottom line, try one of these out. I wish I'd known these things existed sooner because they're that big of a game changer for me. Literally a game changer. Moving on now, and very similar to the previous one, I wish that I had taken the plunge with add-ons and plugins way earlier than I did. I was aware that custom UI scripts and stuff existed for the game I played, thanks to reading blogs and listening to podcasts or watching others play. I was just afraid about the whole process. I thought installing add-ons was gonna involve some tech wizard level of messing around, and I didn't want to break the game, if that made sense. I finally took the bait during my hardcore years of raiding and PvP, and things like damage meters, custom skins, and other data that I can customize for the ease of my own visual consumption became a huge part of how I play MMOs. And today, if I jump into an MMO and I know it allows add-on use, you'll most certainly 100% see me using them. Next one, and probably the only thing I wished I had known in advance, is storage space. MMORPGs are big when it comes to file sizes. My first MMORPG was around 40 gigs in size, and at the time when I first got into it, it was the only PC game I had installed on the laptop I was using for college, so I didn't think much of it. I had enough space at first glance. A few years down the line, and once I started to venture out and try more MMOs, that's when I knew this was going to be a problem. MMORPGs were taking up all my storage space, not to mention I had crappy internet speeds at the time, so I had to do one of two things: uninstall a game to try something else, and then reinstall the former if I wanted to play it again, which was a nightmare because, again, internet speeds. Or second option, go out and buy a shit ton of external hard drives for storage, which at the time was stupid expensive in my part of the world. Today, thankfully, internet speeds are faster and storage has become more affordable. Present time, I have over 15 MMORPGs installed on my computer, and fun fact, my video archive bank for my YouTube channel takes up more storage space than all those MMOs combined. These games and MMOs are still large files in modern era, even though technology has advanced, so I like to see them figure out a way to reduce that moving forward, and I'm looking at you specifically, Elder Scrolls Online. And finally, if I could go back to my strapping young self who just started playing MMOs, this is what I would say to myself. Keep an open mind. Don't be afraid to explore new worlds and take on new adventures. And I'll elaborate on this because I think it's useful and relevant to other players out there who maybe were just like me. My first MMORPG was The Lord of the Rings Online. We clicked. I love Tolkien, I love the books, I love the movies, so naturally, perfect game, right? I thought I would play it forever. During the first couple of years, I was heavily invested and would fall into the category of fanboy or white knight. I thought the game could do no wrong, really, and I defended a lot of things the game did against disgruntled players in chat or guildmates even, because I didn't know any better. I also grew to dislike it when some friends or guildmates would bring up names of other MMOs that they liked better or were going to go play for the next few months. Some of these were World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, Star Wars The Old Republic at the time, and true story, I absolutely hated Guild Wars 2 when it launched because I lost so many guild members and friends to that game in 2012, and I was really bitter, more due to the fact that I could not follow them even if I wanted to because I'd committed myself to Lotro by having a subscription, and I was committed to my guild. I wanted to keep all my friends in the one game that I knew I was going to be playing exclusively, which in hindsight was really naive. The first major break that I took from Lotro was really significant because it lasted 2 whole months, and that's thanks to Skyrim. That game blew my mind, as I'm sure it did for most of you too, and I wanted to find an MMORPG that offered an experience like that. And that's when I first got a taste for exploring new MMOs, which I was afraid to do. I got into Rift with some other Lotro guildmates, I got into the Secret World solo, and even bought a lifetime subscription because the uniqueness of the story alone sold me. I still ended up making my way back to Lotro eventually, but after seeing other worlds, game mechanics, gameplay systems, and payment models and communities, my eyes were open and things were never really the same. I began to question things, and instead of being that stubborn, ignorant fanboy, I took a more neutral stance and opted to see the full picture instead. I began to acknowledge what other MMOs were doing better and what I considered my home MMORPG was doing worse. And in doing so, that allowed me to freshen my perspective, and I gained an enthusiasm for the genre as a whole, a curiosity to see and learn about what's out there, which still burns brightly within me to this day. In early 2016, I decided I was going to go on an adventure. It was time to go see and experience all these online fantasy worlds and stories that I knew I would regret if I didn't at least play them once. And that decision is one of many that led to me making MMORPG videos on this channel. I regret nothing today. I used to be a one MMORPG guy, and don't get me wrong, those were some of the best gaming times in my life, but being able to walk in the narrative shoes of my dozens and dozens of other MMO characters today in all the different worlds and their respective communities has given me a satisfaction that would not exist if I had stayed put. So I'd say keep an open mind. Don't be afraid to venture out and explore other games if you have the means, because you'll never know what you might find. And that's it, guys and gals. That's my list of MMORPG things I wish I knew when I first started. Now, I'll be looking forward to reading all of yours in the comments section, so keep them coming. Again, thanks very much for being here and for being part of this 16,000 strong community that we've become, and I hope we continue to grow into the next decade. Hit that like button for more on MMOs, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel and get notified on all my latest vids. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching.